When people looked at Amara Collins, they didn't see strength. They saw a woman juggling too many grocery bags, a tired smile, a child clinging to her hand. They didn't see the nights she cried silently so her son wouldn't hear. They didn't see the courage it took to start over with nothing but hope. And they certainly didn't imagine that her life was about to collide with a man whose name appeared on skyscrapers and business magazines. A man who believed love had already failed him. Amara's mornings began before sunrise. The kettle whistled softly in their small apartment as she packed lunches and ironed clothes that had already been worn too many times. Her son, Eli, was 7, gentle, observant, wise in ways children usually weren't. "Mama," he said one morning, "do you ever get tired?" She smiled and kissed his forehead. "Only when I forget how strong I am." She worked 2 jobs, one at a local cafe and another cleaning offices at night. Not glamorous, not easy, but it kept the lights on and food on the table. Love, for Amara, had once been full of promises. Her ex-husband had promised forever, until forever became too heavy for him. He left when Eli was 2, chasing dreams that didn't include responsibility. Amara never chased him. She chose her son instead. Julian Kingsley owned more than buildings. He owned influence, power, silence. At 39, he was one of the youngest self-made billionaires in the city. Cold headlines called him ruthless. Boardrooms whispered that he had no heart. The truth? He had loved once, deeply, and it had cost him everything. After his fiancée died in a car accident 5 years earlier, Julian buried himself in work. Love became a luxury he refused to afford. He lived in a penthouse that echoed with emptiness, surrounded by art he never looked at and views he never admired. His wealth built walls no one dared cross, until one rainy evening, someone did. The cafe bell chimed as Julian stepped inside, soaked from the rain, irritated by a day that refused to end. Amara looked up from behind the counter. Their eyes met, and something shifted. She noticed his tired eyes first, not cold, but heavy, like a man carrying grief he'd never put down. He noticed her calm strength, the way she moved with purpose, not panic. The faint scar on her wrist, like proof she had survived something hard. "What can I get you?" she asked softly. "Coffee," he said, then paused. "Strong," she smiled. "Then you came to the right place." It was a small moment, but sometimes small moments change everything. Julian returned the next day, and the next. Not because of the coffee, but because of her. One afternoon, Eli was at the cafe doing homework while Amara worked. Julian watched as she knelt beside her son, patiently explaining a math problem. "You're really good at that," Julian said. Amara laughed softly. "I have to be. He's my whole world." Something inside Julian cracked. No one had ever spoken about love like that around him. Not without fear, not without conditions. Eli looked up. "Are you rich?" Amara gasped. "Eli." Julian chuckled, a sound he hadn't made in years. "I suppose I am." "There is for Medit." Eli nodded seriously. "My mom is rich too." Julian raised an eyebrow. "Is that so?" "She's rich in love." Julian felt his throat tighten. Their conversations grew longer. Julian learned Amara's dreams, not big ones, simple ones. A home with a small garden, enough time to rest. A life where she didn't have to choose between rent and peace. Amara learned that Julian hated being alone, even though he pretended not to care. One evening, he offered her a ride home. She hesitated. "I don't usually." "I know," he said gently. "No pressure." She agreed. As they drove through the city, silence wrapped them, not awkward, but warm. "You don't talk about yourself much," she said. Julian stared ahead. "There are parts of me I've locked away." "Why?" "Because losing them once nearly destroyed me." Amara nodded. "Love does that sometimes. But it's also the only thing worth the risk," she added. Julian looked at her then. Really looked. Julian offered Amara a better job managing one of his charitable foundations. She refused. "I don't want favors," she said firmly. "It's not a favor," he replied. "It's recognition." She accepted on her terms. As their lives intertwined, so did their hearts, but fear lingered. Julian was terrified of loving a woman with a child, terrified of failing them both. Amara was afraid of trusting a man with power, afraid he'd leave when things got hard. One night, after an argument fueled by fear, Julian said something he instantly regretted. "You don't belong in my world." Amara's eyes filled with tears. "You're right," she whispered, "because my world is built on love, not fear." She walked away, and Julian realized something terrifying. He needed her. Julian didn't chase her with money. He chased her with truth. Standing outside her apartment, rain falling again, he said the words he'd been running from for years. "I'm afraid, but I don't want to live without you. Or Eli. I don't want to own everything and still have nothing." Amara searched his face. "Love doesn't promise safety," she said. "It promises honesty." "I can give you that," he said. Every day, she stepped forward, and for the first time in years, Julian let himself cry. They built a life slowly. Not perfect, but real. Julian learned to pack school lunches. Amara learned that asking for help wasn't weakness. Eli learned that family could be chosen. And one quiet evening, as they sat watching the sunset from a modest house Julian bought, not because it was big, but because it felt like home, Amara realized something. Love hadn't saved her. She had saved herself. Love simply met her there. Years later, a magazine named Julian Kingsley the richest man alive. He laughed when he saw it, because real wealth wasn't measured in numbers. It was measured in bedtime stories. Shared laughter. And the quiet peace of knowing you are loved not for what you have, but for who you are. And in that way, they were both billionaires. Subscribe for more stories like this.